Can plant-based foods actually give you an athletic advantage? Don't go away. You're going to find out today on the lifestyle.org podcast. Hey, everybody. I'm here with the amazing Nichole Dandrea-Russert. She is going to help us understand how plant-based foods actually can give you an athletic advantage. Welcome, Nicole. So glad to have you on the podcast.
Hi, Roy. Thanks so much for having me today. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. Now, you have done a lot of work in, as a dietitian, as understanding all the inside things that most people wouldn't know. But the first thing is, many people who I talk to about plant-based diet immediately start to groan because they're like, I don't want to lose my meat. I need my meat, especially the athletes that I work with. I work with a lot of professional athletes, and they all kind of look at me like I'm crazy when I say, you'd be better if you were plant-based.
Well, thanks for spreading that message, first of all. I think I feel like that's like something that they understand best when they practice it, because the mental component, when you're used to eating a certain way, it's hard to break those habits. It's what you know and love, and it's what you feel fuels your performance. So naturally, for any of us, those habits and those customs that we are used to, whether they're culturally based or just habitually based, really stick. It's like a part of our identity. It's who we are. So naturally, it's going to be hard to change. It's hard for anybody to change in any given arena of life, and diet is one of those that we're really tied to.
Yeah.
So yeah, usually I'm like you, love plants, and I'm passionate and can cheerlead around all the people and say, but plants are going to do this and that and the other. And, I get so excited about plants whenever somebody mentions them. And it never fails that they're like, well, the meat argument comes up. I find that the number one way to enter into a meat eater's belly is through their bellies, through good food. And
Yeah.
once they have a couple, I think there are a few things that really bring that resistance. One is the perception of flavor and taste. Like, how am I going to replace that meat with beans? Beans aren't identical to meat in their texture and flavor. They are going to be different, but not saying that beans are meat. I think identifying them as beans and all of the nutritional qualities and making them taste delicious. So there's that resistance to taking the meat off the plate. And then there's the reasons, plants don't taste good, they're bland, but presenting a delicious meal that may have some of those similar flavors that they're used to. So one thing I love to do is to ask them, what is their favorite meal? What's their favorite meat-based dish? And considering all of the spices and flavors and textures that go into that dish, and recreating that same dish and a plant-based version of that same dish. And a lot of times, once they taste it and they realize it can taste delicious, then we can enter into the nutritional benefit conversation and say, okay, now that
Yeah.
you know that it can taste good, here's what it can do for you.
I think now more than ever, Nicole, I'm finding that these plant-based meat companies are providing kind of the off-ramp of the real meat diet, because I've never seen these meat analogs be so close to taste, texture of real meat. So although I don't encourage people to be on a steady diet of the fake meats because of the chemicals, and some of them are not all that healthy, at least it's not like cold turkey. I'm no more meat in my life. There's some really good alternatives to just kind of help wean yourself off of your taste buds being dependent upon that, or your stomach being dependent upon that to make you feel full, etc.
Yes, I agree completely. I think there's a great place for them. And I'm personally so grateful for these companies that offer these meat-like textures. They have done a lot of research and have really nailed it, as you mentioned, Roy. Some of the textures, some I can't eat. I personally don't want the texture of meat. I'm like, I guess too real.
Yeah.
And and for others that that want that meaty texture, they're an ideal replacement, at least to get started, as you mentioned, an off ramp. I think, again, changing that perception. So much of it starts with the mindset. And once you understand that, okay, plants can create this and they can taste delicious, and I'm getting the same textures and flavors that I'm getting in the meat and poultry that I loved before, if you can replace that and start there, then at least you're entering into a new arena of trying new plant-based foods. And then from there, it can be another off ramp.
Yeah.
And maybe you start with like more whole food versions versus the ultra processed foods. And I think there's a place even for those who are fully plant-based and want to occasionally have some of these plant-based meats as something different or a treat, or they're going to a family barbecue and they want to bring their own plant-based meat version, bring that. It really just offers another alternative, and something different. But yeah, as you mentioned, for every single meal, they're not the healthiest option for every meal. Of course, we want variety in everything that we eat. Variety is really key, and we can talk about more of that later. But yeah, but I do think that they play a great place in somebody who's like veg curious, plant-based curious, and gives them an option.
Yeah, to a lot of the people that I work with here in Hollywood, they can't imagine getting rid of meat completely. And one of the cool things, I mean, there's never been a better time to try a plant-based meal, or a couple of meals a week. There's never been a better time than today. I mean,
Yeah.
people are so much more sensitive to taste, texture, and just how your experience is with the food. And even just cutting back a couple of meals is so helpful. I think the big pushback I get is, especially when I'm talking with professional athletes, I want to help them understand inflammation, want to help them understand their keys to being at their peak performance. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, Nicole, is your book, the Vegan Athlete's Nutrition Handbook. Because most of the guys that I talk to, athletes, were brought up, it's meat, 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 milk, milk, milk. Um, to build that muscle, to maintain, to be at peak performance, this protein overload,
Mm.
and they can't imagine where they would get the protein and the nutrition in their heavy workouts, by going plant-based. And so, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, because you outline in your handbook, several ways. I've come across 13 benefits of having a plant-based diet for athletes that you've written about, and I'd love to dig into that, because I know a lot of the people watching this are kinda, maybe, like you said, I love that, veggie curious about, what if I tried it? I don't like the negative aspects that I'm getting from meat. Is there something today that can help me out? So, um, I want I want you basically to start out with, what do you see as probably the top 3 benefits of a plant-based diet if you're really wanting to be fit? I'm 53. Um, I wanna be fit. I think, being a plant-based diet probably has saved me 100 pounds. I joke with people, I say I come from a large family, there's just a few of us, and so I have, the genetics, I have the propensity to be quite large, but, thankfully, I'm not taking in all of the high fats, the triglycerides, all the issues that come with real meats. But what would you say, as an expert here, what are the top 3 benefits for someone that wants to be athletic to be plant-based?
Hmm. Yes. Um, there's so many benefits to plant-based eating. I'm going to try to narrow it down to three, and specifically for performance. I would say
Yeah,
for those athletes who are looking to fuel their performance, once you get the balance of nutrition right, and it's always a work in progress because every individual is different, but plant-based foods can provide the not just the type of carbohydrate, a lot of complex carbohydrates. I think that's one of the arguments that I hear most, especially for those who are bodybuilding. I'm not just getting protein, I'm getting carbohydrate with that. And I only want the protein, as you mentioned, we live in a very protein-centric world, and for good reason. Protein's very important, especially if you're bodybuilding, even for endurance athletes, for athletes of all kinds, they have higher protein needs. But with that protein, this is the biggest point I try to get across to folks, that the carbohydrate that comes in, for example, beans, along with the protein, because beans are a very rich source of protein. Yes, you are getting carbohydrate with it, but that carbohydrate, the type of carbohydrate, the complex carbohydrate, and the fiber in the beans helps to establish a healthy microbiome. And a healthy microbiome helps to contribute to a healthy metabolism. So you are going to burn fat more efficiently. You're going to utilize your nutrition more efficiently. Also, in those beans, you're getting boatloads of we don't think a lot of times, we always think of the macronutrients when we're training. How much protein do I need? How many carbs am I getting? We always think of it as like just on a new from like pulling out the individual nutrients, protein and fat and carbohydrate, but there's so much more that goes into establishing a healthy metabolism and to muscle building and to fueling your performance. And that those are the micronutrients, the vitamins and the minerals and the antioxidants that are contained in plant-based foods. So rather than just looking at protein, look at the whole package. Where is that protein coming from? Where is that protein? And is it in meat? If it's in meat that has a lot of saturated fat, and that saturated fat is actually a place where chemicals, pollutants from the environment is stored. So not only are you getting saturated fat, which is inflammatory, but when that saturated fat is digested in your body, it releases the pollutants that it's been storing. So you're also getting toxins in your body. So that can lead to inflammation. It can definitely impair performance. Whereas when you're looking at whole plant-based foods that are full of protein and healthy compounds like fiber and antioxidants, the antioxidants actually help to scavenge those pollutants and free radicals that can potentially be harmful. So it fuels performance in a variety of ways. First of all, with the metabolism component, but then also because it keeps inflammation. Plant-based eating can keep inflammation at bay. And then for recovery, so fueling performance and then recovery. For recovery, again, looking at the macronutrients, carbohydrate and protein, yes, very important for recovery. We want to replete our glycogen stores if we've gone for a long run or a cycle, or if you're a triathlete. Repleting those carb stores, especially within a window immediately after training, is super important for recovery, as well as getting protein to repair any muscle damage that's occurred, especially for strength athletes or building muscle mass. They need extra protein. So carbohydrate, protein, so important, but we cannot forget about the antioxidants that are needed to also repair a lot of the damage that comes with training over and over again. So those antioxidants are found in plant-based foods. Plants make what's called phytochemicals, also known as phytonutrients. Sometimes they're used interchangeably, but they're scientifically called phytochemicals. And these are compounds that plants make. Plants make them to help defend themselves from the environment. So harsh weather conditions, from insects, plants make them so that it protects them, basically. And when we eat these plants, we eat these phytochemicals that become beneficial to us when we eat them. Many of them act like antioxidants, and they help to keep inflammation at bay. So that means faster recovery. It means if you are cycling today, if you're doing a century ride today and you want to get back up on the bike tomorrow, you are going to recover that much more quickly when you're eating a plant-based diet, so that you can hop back on that bike or you can go out for the run. You're going to have less soreness. That's one of the biggest contributions that I hear from people, or one of the main benefits that I hear from athletes, is that they feel less sore for the next day of training. And athletes, they want to keep going. They want to train hard today and they want to train hard tomorrow. Maybe they have some rest days in between. And those rest days are so important. And what you eat after is so important to help you get back up and train the next day to your best ability. So yeah, so fueling performance, keeping inflammation at bay, and then of course metabolism. You mentioned weight. For those who are maybe recreational athletes and they have a family history of heart disease or diabetes, and they're trying to maintain a healthy weight to prevent the onset of lifestyle diseases. plant-based eating, there's just so much research to support plants and the benefit of prevention of lifestyle diseases. And one of the components of one of the risk factors of many of these lifestyle diseases is an unhealthy weight. So it's not just about weight, but like when you get to a point where, if, of course, like obesity, insulin resistance, and plant-based eating is so key because of the fiber that you find in plants that you don't get in animal products. And that fiber is not found in dairy or meat or fish or eggs. You only get fiber through plants.
Mhm.
And by the way, side note, less than 5% of Americans get enough fiber in their diet. So instead of asking the
Wow.
question, how do I get my protein? How can I increase protein? I feel like we need to shift the conversation to how do I get more fiber, because there's a fiber deficiency.
Mhm.
And it's really so critical for maintaining a healthy weight, for helping to manage blood sugar levels, and for fostering a healthy microbiome, which we hear so much about these days. And really, gut health is so essential to keeping inflammation at bay in your gut and systemically. And we're seeing that in the prevention of a lot of these lifestyle diseases.
I think that's so fascinating. I hear a lot of people talking about probiotics today and about the necessity for probiotics for gut health and how that affects every system. Your gut affects everything. It's probably one of the most important things you should be paying attention to. And so people are saying take probiotics, but they don't understand that if you don't have enough fiber, the probiotic cannot survive because it feeds off of the fiber. The food for the probiotic is the fiber. And so
Yeah.
you could take a bunch of probiotic and it not help you if you don't have enough fiber in your diet as well. I've heard that. Is that true?
Yes, thanks. That is a great point, Roy. It is so true, and I often say to folks, because that's a question that I get often as a dietitian. It's not how do I increase the fiber in my diet, which probiotic is best, which one should I purchase? Because we live in a culture where we're all, we need something quick and convenient, and what's going to fix us. And that's just the nature of all of us. We have busy lifestyles, so it's a lot more difficult to change your diet than it is to take a pill. But as you mentioned, taking a supplement is not, it's going to be a waste of your money if you're not getting the healthy foundation, which is fiber. The probiotics, as you mentioned, Way, need food to survive and to flourish. I recommend one other comment about the probiotics is that there are many species of bacteria, and what may be deficient in your gut may not be what's in that bottle that you're purchasing. So if you do take probiotics, I do recommend taking a food first approach. So eating enough fiber throughout the day, 30 to 40 grams a day, adding some cultured foods onto your plate. So a couple of tablespoons of kimchi or sauerkraut or plant-based yogurt can add some natural bacteria to your plate, and let your body do its own thing. Let your body help your own natural bacteria flourish. But if you do choose to take a probiotic supplement on top of it, looking for a variety of strains, so that if there is one specific strain that you need, chances are more likely, if you're getting a variety of strains, that it may be in there. Um, and then this is a topic for another conversation and something different, but it's something that you could check with your healthcare provider or a dietitian. But there are some specific probiotic strains that are good for certain things. Like there have been probiotic strains that have been studied in like anxiety and depression. So there might be something specific to meet your needs. So probiotics, yes, just purchasing a supplement off the shelves isn't always the quick fix that we need. There's a little bit more, it's a little more involved, and everybody's so individualized.
Wow, that's fascinating. I knew, it's best to look for the one that a lot of them will have like 5 different strains of uh probiotic, but I didn't know specific probiotics could actually help with your mood, with depression and stuff like that. That's new to me.
It's an emerging area, and it's still like so much needs to be researched. I don't think there's like any definitive like this is going to help, but there's definitely associations with low bacteria species with like say depression or so,
Mm.
and in instances where they have helped. with people who have
Wow.
experienced depression. So yeah, it's a really a whole the microbiome, the gut microbiome is such a fascinating field, and it's just still daily things are popping up from research that we're finding out, and it's just like an evolution. It keeps evolving.
That's amazing. Why are you so passionate about this? How did you get started in really seeing how plant-based foods could help people this way?
Yeah. Um, so I've been a dietitian longer than I like to admit for almost 29 years now. And I was trained in a very traditional way, like many dietitians. You've got 3 ounces of meat on your plate and you have dairy with your meal, a glass of milk with your meal. And gosh, I was trained so long ago, maybe it's changed since then with their training folks in school, but and vegetables on the side. And I practiced in a clinical setting for a long time. And in 2007, when dark chocolate started getting a lot of research to back its health benefits, I jumped on that bandwagon because I've always been a dark chocolate lover. And I started creating healthy dark chocolates in my kitchen. And the way I was making them healthy is I was starting with dark chocolate 70% or more, and adding things like blueberries and green tea and pumpkin. They just all naturally were plant-based foods that I was adding because I knew that they were high antioxidant. So I was looking for a high antioxidant treat. I ended up launching that hobby as a business in 2009, and it was a thriving business until 2018 when I closed it to pursue full-time plant-based education. But I through the chocolate company, I was not all plant-based at the time. I had a great appreciation for plants, and as I mentioned, I was looking for a high antioxidant treat. But it was through the chocolate company that I really started to dive into the world of plants. I had a blog as a part of the chocolate company, so I would educate people about the ingredients in the chocolate. And every time I would write a blog, I was pulling up the research. I'm like, wow, like green tea is like magical. Like this, it can do so much. And there's so many compounds in it, and blueberries for cognition. Like I was just really getting more and more passionate about the actual ingredients that were going into the chocolate. And so it was that plus a combination of, because the chocolate was naturally vegan, I partnered at the time. I lived in Los Angeles, and I was partnering with a lot of animal welfare organizations, donating chocolate to their events as part of their fundraisers. And I would attend these events. And it was at a fundraiser for with an organization called Mercy for Animals, and I just love them to bits. They do so much good for people, the planet, um, and they showed a video of a dairy factory farm, and I had no idea. I mean, I had been trained in a traditional way as a dietitian. I really never connected the dots with how the dairy I was consuming got to my plate. And when I saw that, that was it for me. I was like, okay, I don't want to contribute to factory farms. I don't want my dollar voting for that kind of practice. And I am seeing the power of plants through this research. So I would say it was an easy decision for me to say I'm going all plant-based. I'm vegan, plant-based, and um, that was an easy decision. The challenging part, which I think is a challenging part for a lot of people, and back to your original point, when you ask people to go plant-based and to take meat off their plate, I came from a meat and dairy background as well. The initial reaction is like, no. And it is hard, initially it is not like, it wasn't an overnight thing for me to learn how to eat plant-based. I asked my husband about it when I got home, saw the factory farm video, was like, let's go vegan, let's like do this all plant-based. And he was on board. He said, I'll do this if you can prepare. His main thing, which for a lot of people, is taste, flavored. Okay, if you can
Yeah.
prepare some delicious meals, I'll try this with you. And I think it was like the fifth night of just pasta and broccoli, he was like, we have to switch it up. Like, you need to learn how to make something different than pasta and broccoli. I'm like, I really have no idea what else to put like on the plate. So
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. So the biggest thing that I did was invest in 2 plant-based cookbooks
Mhm.
just to learn how to make some full, complete meals that were satisfying and had more than just pasta and broccoli. From a nutrition standpoint, I knew that that wasn't the healthiest thing anyway. So I'm like, I need this culinary component to learn how to cook plant-based meals. So yeah, and that was in 2013. And I'm just making this point for anyone listening who's like, I can't do it. Where do I start? That's always the biggest question, is that you just start with one meal. Make one plant-based meal. Find one food that you love. And, if it is pasta, find a great plant-based pasta dish. Maybe make a plant-based version of pasta bolognese or something, or anything else. If you love tacos, find a plant-based version of that. Start with one meal, and then just know that you are learning. You can't know all the things overnight. You'll learn with each and every meal, and you'll find some that you love. You'll find some that you maybe don't love so much, but like keeping a recipe library of your go-to dishes. And that's just going to kind of be your launch pad and moving forward.
That's so true. Most people are like, "Oh, but I have to give up my favorite savory flavors, or I have to give it this or that." That the reality is there are so many incredible dishes you can't make with meat. For me, my big thing, my wife cooks vegan a lot. We're every meal it's meatless, but sometimes she'll make something and it's trying to be something else, and I actually find that I dislike those dishes that are trying to be a meat
Yeah.
product or trying to be something else, and I really enjoy the dishes that it's not trying to be that. It's trying to have an incredible flavor and texture profile that you really enjoy, but surprisingly, it's all plant-based. And so for those who are watching or listening, don't think, how am I gonna make a hamburger, a cheeseburger, and now it's all plant-based. Don't think, you know, when you try tacos one way and you don't like the fake meat, uh, don't give up on that. There's so many options of what you can do that are plant-based that would have exactly the flavor profile, the texture that you'll actually enjoy it so much more. And I've had family members, who, for birthday, they were gonna celebrate and go have an In-N-Out burger, which is everyone's favorite, and they had it, and they're like, "It's been so long, I actually enjoy what my plant-based burgers are now so much more than even an In-N-Out burger," which was a huge testimony to how your taste buds change, how
Mm.
your body actually appreciates how it feels when it's healthy versus how it feels, and you don't even realize it, how it feels after you eat something that is the high triglyceride fat, the foods that are not in high fiber and the things that you really need. So, I always tell people, look for something that tastes great, the texture is amazing, it's that savory profile you're looking for, but don't try to make it like this is the veggie version of the meat option, because a lot of times it kind of flops, and I
Yeah.
just don't enjoy it at all.
I agree. Again, going back to the mindset, like when your intention is, okay, this is going to be my meat substitute. So it doesn't always translate the same, but really just highlighting the fact that they're tasty, whole plant-based foods. And I see a lot of restaurants doing this now rather than just like inserting a Beyond Burger and calling it a burger, which, they're trying to replicate traditional burgers. But so many restaurants now. I just visited one recently in Philadelphia this weekend, and gosh, their array of plant-based foods and the satisfying meals they created, just highlighting plants. There was nothing they weren't trying to be anything other than themselves. These plant-based foods. It was like black rice and chickpeas and a curry sauce, and it was just like the flavors, the textures. It hit all of the flavor notes, as you mentioned. Your taste buds really get used to a certain way of eating. And when you start to change that, it is like your taste buds change every 7 to 12 days. So you can get your have your taste buds adapt to what you're eating. And that's what happens a lot of times too. You'll hear folks, like, as an example, I think this is more common, folks will start to give up, so decrease sodium content. Maybe it's for high blood pressure or other reasons. And then when they try to taste something salty, they're like, oh my gosh, that's so salty, when it was something that may had been they were eating regularly before. But once they
Right.
decrease the sodium, they go back to that and they're like, wow, it's really salty. It's the same thing with plants. Your taste buds start to naturally appreciate those flavors that you may not have tried before. Yeah, so it's just getting them used to those flavors. I use that example often too with bitter greens, which are oftentimes hard for people to eat, and leafy greens are so good for you. But if you're not used to eating bitter, if you're not used to eating kale, it's going to taste really bitter to you. But if you give yourself like a 7-day window and you're going to eat just a little bit of kale each day, you might find at the end of that 7 days, you're like, I don't really taste the bitter compounds as much. It still might be there, but it's definitely not as prominent as when you first put that kale into your mouth. So definitely giving plants a chance is a good idea. The other thing I was going to mention, that I didn't mention as a part when I was sharing my story earlier, um, you mentioned you get used to a certain way of being, and for I was in the same boat. You know, I feel fine. I don't need to, you know, I feel like I felt like when I was eating meat and dairy and a side of vegetables, like I felt healthy, and I was running, and I was a triathlete at the time, was doing my thing, and was like, I don't feel like I need to change. But when I went to all plant-based eating, I didn't realize what I was feeling before until I switched to all plants. I mean, I've got a history of like cystic acne. My skin cleared up. That was the biggest thing that I noticed. My skin cleared up. Three things that I personally noticed that I didn't know that were even, I mean, I knew the cystic acne was an issue, um, but the others, sleep, I slept like a baby. And that's actually something that I hear from people all the time. Once they start eating more plant-based foods, they're like, I've had the best sleep of my life. And that is something that I personally benefited from as well, that I didn't realize how much better I could sleep when I switched to plants. And the other thing was digestion. Just like, I think I probably felt like, having some being bloated on occasions and not feeling like my food was digesting well was normal. But then when I started eating plants, I'm like, oh, this is how it's supposed to feel. You
Mhm.
normalize the way that you're supposed to feel, but until you make that transition, so you can change both your taste buds, and then once you enter the realm of plants and you start to regularly eat them, you may notice some changes that you weren't expecting to notice.
I think sleep is so important for everyone, not just athletes. What is it about the plant-based diet that you think attributes to having better sleep?
Mm. This is one of my favorite topics because it's one of the things that we can see immediately, as I mentioned, like one of the benefits we see immediately, and there's research to support it. So there are studies showing that a fiber-rich diet is beneficial. It can help you get into that slow, deep wave sleep. So that sleep where you wake up the next morning, you feel like so refreshed, and you're like, wow, like that felt so good. You just feel like it was just the best sleep of your life. Fiber can help you get into that slow, deep wave sleep where you're really well rested. It's not disruptive sleep and you're just like in a good state. Whereas saturated fat, sugar, is probably a more obvious one. If you eat a lot of sugar before bedtime, it can cause blood sugar swings. So that can disrupt. It can make it difficult to fall asleep. It could also disrupt your sleep. Saturated fat, again, is mostly found is in the highest amounts in animal products, and it's linked to inflammation. So gut
Mhm.
health. There's a new research study that came out with gut health. So saturated fat can disrupt gut health, which can lead to inflammation in the gut, can lead to inflammation systemically. And there's new research showing that it can actually impair sleep through the gut as well. So those are the two biggest culprits. Obvious ones are alcohol, caffeine that can disrupt sleep, eating late at night, a big meal late at night. So, not eating right before bedtime if you're able to eat a few hours before bedtime, let your food digest. Because when we sleep, uh, our brains have a cleansing system, and for the physiology of our body, instead of focusing on digestion, if we eat a large meal at night and our system is focused on digestion, we aren't going to get that cleansing system, that natural cleansing system. So going to bed with not necessarily starving, because that can also wake you up. And again, everybody's individualized. I personally need like a little, I don't like to go to bed hungry, so I'll have a little snack. But there are certain foods, back to the plant-based question, there are certain plant-based foods that can help you get into a good sleep, like deep wave sleep. And those are like Kiwis are great for sleep. So having some kiwi and plant-based yogurt, pistachios are another component or another food that can get you into a good sleep. So even having like a snack, like plant-based yogurt that's unsweetened, so you're not getting the sugar, naturally sweeten it with kiwis or dark cherries are another food that can help you. So that have been shown to help people sleep well. Add some like pistachios on top. They have components. They've got melatonin in them that can help. That's what we make our sleep hormone, but they naturally have some melatonin in them. And then there's also fiber in the cherries and the pistachios. And then the other, I was going to mention one other thing. What was the other thing I was going to mention? Darn, I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, just having some of those fiber rich, melatonin rich snacks if you do need a snack before you go to bed or even earlier in the
Yeah.
day. But fiber's key. And soy is one other food that may help with sleep. The phytonutrients, the phytochemicals in soy have been shown to help with a restful sleep. And I know soy is also controversial and there are always like people, it's very polarizing topic. Soy, when it's organic, it is important to look for organic whenever possible because so much soy grown here in the US is a GMO. So looking for organic soy whenever possible, but things like soy milk, unsweetened soy milk, and tofu and tempeh are great sources of plant-based protein. As we were
Mhm.
talking about before, a lot of folks wonder about the protein. Wonderful sources of plant-based protein, so beneficial to health. There really are so many studies on soy and the benefits to health, and one of them is potentially helping folks sleep more soundly.
I love that. One of the things that all trainers try to help athletes understand is it's not just about how you're getting to hypertrophy where you're exhausted, your muscles are exhausted. That's what helps them trigger, growth. But they also elevate rest. You have to have full rest, healing rest, muscle building rest. And so, I mean, sleep is the absolute important ingredient in the recipe of being an athlete. So, yeah, being plant-based can actually help you there too. You mentioned multiple times that the word inflammation as well, and that's one of the things, Tom Brady is really big on helping people understand the role of inflammation in causing you not to have the gains or the athletic performance that you want. So he's all about anti-inflammation. TB12, his program is all about how to help you from diet and exercise to not live in inflammation because it really holds you back from being the athlete that you can be. And obviously, he holds a few records, and so
Yeah.
he definitely understands once he shifted and was shown by a health expert that the role that inflammation was playing in holding him back. That's when everything took off, and that's why he's passionate about it. So I hope all the athletes that are watching, or any of you that just want to be your physical best, understand if you want to get rid of all the inflammation that's holding you back, one great step you can take is leaning into your plant-based diet, and let yourself slowly adjust into having a complete plant-based diet. One of the things that you might run into, Nicole, is people who are really passionate. They dive right in, and it's too much all at once. What do you
Mm.
typically suggest to people, who are interested and passionate, but you don't want them to use this as a fad diet and then they throw it away a month later?
Mhm. That's a great question, because that happens often, and I usually discourage people who say, "Just give me a diet, tell me what to eat, and I'm going to do it tomorrow." So changing 360 or 180, it often can result in that.
Yeah.
Gradual changes really have been shown to be more lifestyle based. So one small step a day can lead for 1 week can lead to a habit at the end of that week. Then another small step the next week can lead to another habit. And by the end of that year, you've taken so many small steps that have then become lifestyle habits. It's not a diet, it becomes a part of your lifestyle. We talked about your taste buds acclimating to flavors and your body getting used to certain foods. And that's the thing too with fiber. If you are in the category of not getting enough fiber, as I mentioned, less than 5% of people in this country do get enough fiber. So if you're in the 95% category, you don't want to go from all to nothing overnight, because you will experience some gastrointestinal discomfort, and that's never fun. And that could be a reason why people fall back and they're like, I feel terrible on this, I'm
Yeah.
bloated, I'm gassy. So it takes your body some time to get used to any changes. So
Yeah.
I recommend starting with one of several things. So an easy step could be one plant-based meal a week. It could be one plant-based meal a day if you are already eating plant forward now. It could be simply not changing anything you're doing at all, eating your regular breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but just adding some plants to your plate. So if you're eating a sandwich every day for lunch, adding some leafy greens and tomato and red onion and avocado to that sandwich. And that's just it. So just thinking about like what you're already eating and adding rather than taking, because the diet mentality is often restrictive. And you can't have this food, or you cannot have an entire food group sometimes, like,
Mhm.
keto diet, minimizing carbohydrates, which is not been shown to be beneficial, especially to gut health. Um, so just simply, instead of that diet mentality of restriction, think about a mentality of abundance. Oh, I get to add these plant-based foods to my plate. Or again, like if you're having a sandwich at lunch, using that example, adding a side of vegetables with that sandwich. So just small steps, and whatever that looks like to you, because everybody is so individualized. So what's easy for you? What can you implement today? Think about that. What plant-based foods can you add? And that way too, when you move in small steps, you are allowing your body to adapt to the different types of fibers, because it's not just one type of fiber that's in all plant-based foods. There's a variety of types of fiber, and for your body to get used to it, just slowly add them in. And again, just know that if you're the type of person, which a lot of athletes are the type A, like just give me the regimen, tell me what to do, I want to do it tomorrow and go all in. um, Practice patience and
Yeah.
know that in time you're going to get there, and every little step really makes a big impact on your health.
Yeah.
So small steps. And there's so many, as you mentioned, it's a great time to experiment in the plant-based world, and to start diving into it to see what's out there from a brand perspective. You go into the grocery stores, there's so many options, and then also online, investing in cookbooks. Like there's just a plethora of plant-based cookbooks and recipes online, that there's no shortage of anything right now. You just have the world at your fingertips. So you can really pick and choose what direction. If you do enjoy being in the kitchen, start with a recipe. If you don't enjoy being in the kitchen, maybe look to see what your local market has available that's plant-based, instead of maybe the traditional meat dish that's already prepared that you get. And yeah, just start taking note. And again, I will say, don't let one there will be times when you prepare a meal and it's not your favorite meal, or if you try a new plant-based food and you're like, I don't love it. um, or if you get you go to a restaurant and you try a plant-based dish and it's not your favorite, it doesn't mean that happens to me. That I'm like, that was a good plant-based dish, but I probably wouldn't get it again. But there are dishes that I'm like, wow, like we're going back there. Or
Yeah.
wow, that recipe turned out really good. Adding that to the recipe library, we're making that
Mhm.
at least once a week or once a month. So noting the things that do help you thrive from just a health perspective, what makes you feel physically more energized and mentally more focused, just taking note of what helps you function at your best, and what you love in terms of taste and flavors, and start experimenting. And the same with food. If you don't love kale, for example, I can give you an example of my husband. I like kale, and I like just tearing the leaves off the stem and massaging the leaves until they're tender, and a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, and with a sprinkle of lemon, a little bit of salt. That's it. Like I like it like that. My husband will not touch kale unless it's chopped into tiny pieces. Like, he's like a kid. He's like, "I won't eat it unless you chop it really tiny because
Yeah,
it tastes too bitter and it's really hard to chew.
yeah,
So I need it tiny." So something as simple as that, like chopping something differently or cooking, maybe cooked kale is better than raw kale for you, or
yeah,
for me, I don't love whole beets, but I like them shredded. So, like,
yeah,
just don't say no to a particular plant-based food just based off of one try.
yeah.
Try it a variety of ways, because a variety of plant-based foods is going to give you a variety of types of fiber. It's going to give you a variety types of these phytochemicals. So thinking about the colors, all the rainbow of colors that you see when you're walking down the produce aisle of your supermarket, those are all phytochemicals giving those plants those colors. And each one of those phytochemicals serves a different function in our body. So getting a variety is so key when it comes to thriving on a plant-based diet.
It's so true. I love your comments about kale. For me, texture is a huge thing. So I totally understand what your husband's going through. I have to have my kale chopped small too. My wife does this diced walnuts with it as well when she does it as like a
Ooh.
salad or whatever. And just the fact of having that texture along with the texture of kale makes it really enjoyable for me compared to if I'm just eating the kale. So I know a lot of people try the plant-based stuff, for example, tofu, and they're like, I just can't get over the mushy texture. Well, there's different types of tofu. There's more firm tofu, and there's the mushy stuff that I can't do. It's like I don't even do flan because it's yeah, pumpkin pie is hard for me. Um, but if it's cooked a certain way with the textures with it and diced maybe in smaller portions, smaller segments, it completely changes the experience. And so I always suggest to people, get out your device and go to Yelp and look up vegan restaurants in my area. Go to the best one in your area and order something from the menu that really looks like the flavor profile, something that you like. It opens up your mind to what vegan food can be, and then it opens up your mind to what you cook at home, because there's all these things that you realize on this menu. I'd love to order 5 of these things. Well, I can only order 1. So it really helps you understand going plant-based is not a narrowing down. It actually is an explosion of just
Mm.
a culinary landscape that is so fun and so delicious that you'll wonder why you were so limited before in your menu before you checked it out. But going to Yelp and seeing what the reviews say, because go to the highest starred reviewed vegan place in your area, not just any vegan place, and I guarantee you're going to be blown away.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that so much. And I love what you said, how in the culinary arena, everything expands when you feel like you're going to be restricted, but it's actually quite the opposite. The whole world of plants opens up, and it's really amazing to see the types of dishes that plant-based foods can create. And yeah, you have so many more options. But yes, choosing a restaurant that has been rated well or recommended by a friend and giving that a try first is a great first step.
Yeah. In the final minutes that we have, Nicole, I want to talk to you about one of the things that we've been talking a lot about, athletes and and that approach to understanding plant-based diet. But for people like me who are in the second half of our lives, I'm 53, and most people don't guess I'm 53, which is a good thing. And I really attribute that to the fact that I've been plant-based for 53 years. Um, but one of the things that you bring out in your work is that plant-based actually improves your cognitive ability, especially in the later years of your life. Unpack that for us, because I think it's so important for us to understand how we can really invest in our cognitive abilities when most people are seeing a decline, that the plant-based diet actually has such a positive impact on us at that time of our lives.
Mm. I love this question so much. It's kind of in line with the sleep question because they're so interrelated. Like getting a good night's sleep can help with cognition, and being in a good cognitive state and a good mood or like a grounded mood can help with sleep. So they're so interrelated. And plant-based eating can absolutely support brain health in different ways. So first, the going back to the phytochemicals that act like antioxidants in our body help to keep inflammation at bay. And that's just not systemic. For athletes, a lot of times we think of inflammation as joint pain and muscle recovery, but there's brain inflammation. And blueberries are probably the best example that have been shown to help with cognition. A pigment in them called anthocyanin has been shown to protect the brain and keep inflammation at bay. So that's one of the ways. So again, going back to the rainbow of foods, consuming a wide variety of foods like the oranges, sweet potato, and butternut squash or orange, like those orange vegetables, they have got pigments in them, carotenes. It's like the plant-based version of vitamin A. Vitamin A is in animal products, and carotene, beta carotene, is the plant-based version of vitamin A, is a wonderful antioxidant, keeping inflammation at bay. So that's one of the ways. And then the other, we hear about the gut being the second brain or the gut brain axis. The other, again, is going back to fiber. Getting enough fiber in your diet daily can help to keep um, obviously your digestion running smoothly, but also keep inflammation in your gut at bay. And then that leads to less inflammation systemically as well, including to the brain. And then the gut also is one of the largest producers of serotonin. So the feel good neurotransmitter that gives us the feel good feelings. And so keeping our gut healthy is going to help that increase production of serotonin and mood and less depression and better focus with the anti-inflammatory nutrients and with less inflammation in our gut, which results to less inflammation systemically. So foods can really, and then there's specific nutrients. And I was mentioning sleep before. When I lost my train of thought, I was like, there's one other thing I was going to mention when you just went back onto this topic. The other thing I was going to mention was magnesium that is found in legumes and nuts and seeds.
Mhm.
This is a essential mineral that's involved in many, many reactions in the body. But one of the things it helps with is mood and sleep. So magnesium-rich foods can help, and your magnesium is abundant in plant-based foods, leafy greens, legumes, nuts, seeds. Um, and then omega-3 fatty acids. So those are supportive. Now with omega-3 fatty acids, you can get those in plant-based foods. A lot of people go to fish, fatty fish for omega-3 fatty acids, but fatty fish can be, well, I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but the sustainability aspect in commercial fishing is another conversation. But also a lot of our fish now, our oceans are so polluted. A lot of our fish are coming with heavy metals and
Yeah.
plastics. So a better solution are plant-based omega-3. So chia seeds, flax meal, hemp seeds, walnuts, you mentioned in your kale salad that it sounded delicious, are wonderful sources of omega-3s. If you're all plant-based, it's a type of omega-3. Not to get into detail about the omega-3s, but these are a wonderful source of anti-inflammatory omega-3s. I want to say about those plant-based foods. There's a different type of omega-3 that our brain uses that may or may not convert from those in the plant. So supplementation sometimes for cognition of omega-3 is like a plant-based version. There's a algae-based omega-3 version that's better. It's absorbed just as well as the fish omega-3 that can help with cognition. So there's lots of nutrients that we could talk about, but those are a couple that come to mind right now. But first, the foundation of fiber rich foods, which are your plant-based foods, and a wide variety of colors to get those antioxidants is really what's going to support brain health. And then when needed, if you need extra supplementation on top of it to support brain health.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important. I know there are a lot of people who, you know, they really focus so hard on being as healthy as they can be. Another life coach, everyone knows Tony Robbins, was just feeling horrible and he couldn't figure out. He goes to his doctor, what's going wrong? and the level of mercury in his blood was
Mm,
near lethal. It was horrible. Well, here's the guy who's got millions and millions of dollars. So of course he's eating the best food that he can, and he's eating sea bass, thinking that he's eating the healthiest thing that he can eat, getting the omega-3s that way. And because of the pollution in our oceans, eating this very expensive sea bass was actually killing him. So
mm,
uh, even he has said, I had to find a different source for
mm.
supplementation of the omega-3s that I need in my life. And that's that's something we're all having to look at today to make sure that um, you know our diet really is as clean as possible, because this inflammation that you spoken about all throughout this conversation really is our greatest enemy. And by having an organic plant-based diet, we really reduce all of those risks to you know having, all of this effort put into being as fit as we can, and yet feeling worse off afterwards. So, if
Well,
you were to wrap up, Nicole, what you wish everyone would understand here as we close, what would the key encouragement or key words of advice that you'd want to share with everybody?
thanks for asking that, Roy. I think back to our conversation before, that recognizing that yes, plant-based eating is absolutely a healthy way of eating. It's a healthy lifestyle. It's sustainable for both people and the planet. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I think
Yeah,
that's the biggest barrier for people, taking it one step at a time. You don't have to go overnight. You don't even have to be 100% plant-based right now. As you mentioned earlier, taking it one meal at a time and adding more plants to your plate, replacing one meat meal a week with a plant-based meal, and focusing on those whole colorful plants, and not saying you're getting, you're replacing meat one to one. You're just, it's a different meal, and just
yeah,
appreciating that aspect of plants and what they can create. But yeah, I think getting past that barrier, that it's okay if you're not, if you just want to take your time one step at a time, and you'll eventually get there if going all plant-based is your goal, or if you just want to implement some plant-based meals and foods throughout the week, that's great too. So do what fits for you.
that's amazing advice. And everybody, I want you to get the Vegan Athletes Nutrition Handbook. I put the link in the description below. So definitely click on that link, get this handbook. Nichole Dandrea-Russert, you are helping so many people. And I just want to say a great big thank you for you spending your time here helping us to live our best life.
Thank you, Rory. I appreciate your time today, and thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. If you'd like more content like this, if you'd like to watch our lifestyle television show, if you'd like to watch our other podcast, or even peruse through our growing blog of articles to help you live your best life, definitely visit us at our website, lifestyle.org. And we hope that in between now and then, you'll just continue to find the best ways and the best information possible to help you live your best life. Until then, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining us for this podcast episode. We encourage you to click on the subscribe button and the like button. It will help you and your friends to be able to find more content like this to help you live your best life possible. We also encourage you to go to our website, lifestyle.org, where you'll find more television shows, you'll find more podcasts like this, and you'll find a never-ending blog to help you to truly live your best life possible. So thank you for going on this journey with us at lifestyle.org.